encuentro con nuestra querida amiga Olivia, que ha viajado una gran distancia para compartir con nosotros y traernos un mensaje muy importante. Yo quisiera transmitirles unas palabras, una pequeña reflexión para luego darle la palabra a Olivia, comentarles que nos pueden ir enviando en el chat las preguntas, comentarios, reflexiones que posterior a las palabras de Olivia nos pueden ayudar a guiar y fomentar una conversación respecto de la temática que hoy día nos reúne. Bien. Hoy día nos reunimos para abordar un tema de gran profundidad y relevancia. Les quiero contar que esta mañana, mientras venía para acá, busqué algunas palabras que capturaran el sentido de lo que vamos a escuchar. Y la inspiración llegó cuando puse en el dial la Radio María, donde muchas veces se transmiten reflexiones teológicas y filosóficas en ese horario. Justo cuando estaba por perderme un comentario del director, anunció una canción que jamás imaginé, que no escuchaba hace muchos años y que realmente me hizo reflexionar más que cualquier tratado de filosofía o de derecho, que es una canción que seguramente conocen, Que canten los niños, de José Luis Perales. Justo la pusieron ahí en la radio. Esta canción, quizás considerada un poquitito cliché en su momento, resuena hoy con mayor fuerza. Nos recuerda la urgencia y la responsabilidad que tenemos como sociedad, no solo de cuidar a nuestros niños, sino de promover su dignidad. Estamos ante un dilema simple, es más simple de lo que creemos, pero es crucial, más allá de reflexiones profundas que posteriormente son necesarias. ¿Estamos o no estamos por los niños? La realidad es que existen niños abandonados, niños que sufren, todos los niños que cantan en esa canción. Y es fundamental que enfoquemos nuestras discusiones sobre políticas públicas y otros intereses en el respeto y promoción de sus derechos. Cualquier debate legislativo, filosófico o cultural carece de fundamento si no se centra en la dignidad y el bien de los niños. Por ello es un honor contar hoy con la presencia de nuestra querida Olivia Maurel, quien nos compartirá su historia. Olivia es abogada, portavoz y escritora y activista, pero hoy quiero invitarlos a escucharla como la niña que tuvo la valentía de alzar la voz hace ya algunos años. Esperemos escuchar a través de ella esa voz con la que cantan los niños, para que tantas niñas, niños y mujeres puedan ser escuchados. Agradecemos especialmente a nuestro Observatorio para la Familia y a la Facultad para el Cuidado de la Salud de la Universidad San Sebastián, junto con Redifam, la red latinoamericana de Institutos de Familia, por ser los organizadores de esta importante actividad. Hoy más que nunca es vital que uniéndonos a la voz de Olivia y a tantas y tantos como ella, seamos un eco de aquellos que aún no tienen voz. Bienvenida, Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thank you to the University, the Observatorio para la Familia, Redifam, and all the others for organizing this conference and letting me speak freely about my story. So today, like I always like to do, I've been doing this for the past 4 days. I haven't slept in the past 4 days. So I'm sorry if I'm a little redundant because I see some faces here that I have seen for the last couple of days, especially you in front of me. I don't want to speak about law. I don't want to speak about politics. I don't even want to speak about bioethics. I really want to begin with a little girl, the story of a little girl. And before I became an activist, like you mentioned, before I wrote a book that's in front of me, before I began, and like I always say, I studied tax law and I'm completely crazy for doing so. I was simply a little girl trying to understand why she felt so different in her family. There's one sentence that I usually use to describe myself, and that makes people quite uncomfortable, and perhaps it should. I am a pure product of surrogacy. So everything that surrogacy was designed to achieve, it achieved in me. I was carried through surrogacy. I was conceived through surrogacy. I was intentionally separated from my mother because of surrogacy. And for almost 30 years, I lived with the consequences of that decision without even knowing its name. So everything I'm about to tell you is what those words have meant for one human life. People often ask me, well, when did you discover you had been born through surrogacy? But I believe that is the wrong question. The real question is, when did I realize something was missing? And I actually don't really recall a time when I didn't. Some of my earliest memories are looking at the woman who raised me. I was around 6 years old. Those are the first memories that I have. Before that, I don't really have any memories actually of my childhood. I know that the woman that was raising me loved me very deeply. She cared for me. She did everything that she thought was right. And yet there was this little voice inside me that I could never silence. A little voice that whispered, "She isn't your mother." And I never said those words aloud. What child would? Children don't question adults. Children question themselves. And I remember looking at her and seeing that she was completely different than me. I was tall. I was blonde back in the day. I had blue eyes. She was this very short, brown-skinned, brown-eyed woman, very beautiful, but very Mediterranean. And we looked nothing alike, nothing alike. And she looked a lot older also than all the other mothers of my friends at school. So I knew something was off. And I spent years believing that actually there was something wrong with me. And perhaps some of you felt this before. I see that there's someone here in the room that has been adopted, and I'm very actually emotional about this because we share, I think, a lot in common. Not maybe because of surrogacy, maybe because of adoption, but every young person spends part of their life asking, who am I? Where do I belong? Why do I feel so different? And for me, those questions, they never disappeared. They became heavier. And as I grew older, that emptiness grew with me. I became a teenager carrying a sadness I couldn't explain. And I tried, unfortunately, to ignore it. And I tried to numb it. So throughout my adolescent years, which are probably the worst years possible, in which there are years where you're trying to grow yourself as an adult, as a distinct human being from your parents, I turned towards alcohol, a lot of drug to numb the pain, anything that could silence the questions that I had, if only for a few hours. People sometimes imagine teenagers who drink too much or take drugs are looking for excitement. I personally wasn't. I was looking for relief. I wasn't trying to escape life. I was trying to escape pain. Pain I didn't have words for. And there were moments where I believed life itself had become way too painful to continue. So unfortunately, I did try to take my life a few times. And looking back today, I don't think I wanted to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. Because when you spend every day feeling that a piece of yourself is missing, you begin to wonder whether you were the piece that was never meant to exist. And eventually, I was going completely crazy. You have to imagine this. I was struggling with my identity. I didn't know where I came from. I didn't know who I was. I couldn't build you can't build yourself as a human, as an adult, without knowing where you come from. And when I was 17 years old, I remember I finally said, well, okay, now I have to look for answers. So I took my birth certificate, and the only information that I had on my birth certificate that I knew was right was the town that I was born in, and that is Louisville, Kentucky. So I remember I sat in front of my computer, I opened up Google, I typed into Google at first, Kentucky, Louisville, and in the beginning, I actually just typed in adoption agencies because I thought I was adopted. I didn't know that surrogacy existed back in the day. I had no idea what it was. I just simply knew something that in my story didn't make sense. But then very quickly, fertility clinics started appearing online on the research surrogacy agencies. And I remember like staring at my screen, asking myself, like, what in the world is surrogacy? Like, what the heck is this? And that night, I spent the entire night researching on surrogacy, what it is, and I hardly slept, just like I did now. And before the sun came up, I had my answers. I discovered that the woman who had carried me was my surrogate. I had been born through surrogacy. And suddenly every feeling that I carried through childhood finally had a name. So life moved on. I eventually, later on in life, fell in love. I married the man who is now my husband and still my husband. We've been together for 14 years now. Together we had 3 beautiful, beautiful children. And becoming a mother changed everything. For the first time, I remember Eleanor, she's my first daughter. I was 26 when I gave birth to her. Now I'm 34. I feel old. I'm not, but I feel old. It's 8 years ago. She's so big now. She's my little girl. I remember when she was placed on my in my arms for the first time I gave birth to her. She immediately stopped crying. Immediately. And it's not because she recognized my face. She had never seen my face. She spent 9 months inside of my womb. She recognized my voice, the voice she had heard every single day for 9 months. She recognized my heartbeat, the heartbeat that had accompanied every moment of her existence. And then in that very, very instant, I thought about my own beginning, maybe a little selfishly. I had imagined that first day. I mean, I've tried to imagine that first day of my life for so many years, so many times. And not because I remember it, I don't. Not because I know what happened, but I know and I knew at that very moment that for 9 months I had only known one voice, one heartbeat, and one mother. And then I was placed into a little hospital bassinet to be cleaned away. And I was separated from the only person I had ever known in my whole entire world, and that is my mother. I have no conscious memory of that moment, but I've spent my entire life living with its consequences. And that was the day, like I said, I lost my mother. And when I turned 30, which is fun, but my husband and I got married. With a husband comes a wonderful mother-in-law. Mine is absolutely great. And my mother-in-law, saw me struggle with my identity issues for so long, so long. She saw me struggle with depression, with anxiety. And even when I had my children, the problem was that I didn't know 50% of my story. So I didn't know 25% of the story of my own children. I didn't know my medical background. I didn't know what I was passing on to my children. So I felt very guilty and actually quite sad, even if my children brought me a lot of love and happiness, but I did feel that guilt being a mother. So my mother-in-law, she at 30 years old, she gifted me a DNA test. I remember she gifted it to me, and it was kind of awkward. It was at my birthday, my 30th birthday. And she handed it to me, and she just said, like, I hope this gives you answers. And that little box sat on my kitchen counter for several days, and because I couldn't bring myself to open it. I was completely terrified. You have to understand that at 17 years old, when I understood that I was born through surrogacy, I didn't tell anyone. I mean, I told everyone that I was born through surrogacy except my parents. So I had been telling my best friends, my husband, my mother-in-law, my doctors, everyone knew I was born through surrogacy except my parents. And at that moment, when I had to take the DNA test, I thought, well, what if I had imagined everything? What if I was wrong all along? I was scared. I was deathly afraid that my instinct had led me to something wrong all my life. And I remember my husband, he looked at me and he said something I'll never forget. He said, you know what, it doesn't matter. Whatever the results, I will still love you. And that was all I needed. So I took the test. And when I took it, I wasn't looking for another family, not at all. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I just simply wanted the truth of my origins. A few weeks later, everything changed when I received the DNA test. I received it on my phone. It was 5 a.m, I believe, in France, and I received a little notification saying, "Oh, you've been matched." So it's not Tinder. It's it's My Heritage DNA on a platform. And it was incredible because you can see on My Heritage DNA your ethnic background. So I had no French blood, and the first reaction I had was like, yes, I was right. Like I'm not crazy, I'm not a lunatic. I'm not a crazy woman that had been inventing a story for so many years. And I saw that I had a lot of Lithuanian blood, Norwegian blood. Still don't know why I have Norwegian blood, but I saw my ethnic background, and in the very bottom, you can see that my DNA was matched in the system with my cousin's DNA, a cousin. Her name was Jen. And at first I thought that it was a joke, to be honest. But I messaged with Jen, and she answered very kindly. And she told me that someone in the family had become a surrogate. And this cousin Jen, she led me to my half-brother. My half-brother led me to 3 of my half-sisters, and eventually to my surrogate mother. I just want to stop a minute to talk about my half-brother because he has a special place in my heart today. He's a half-brother that I never known had existed. And a year later, when I took the DNA test, I was 30. A year later, when I was 31, we met in Grand Central Station in New York. I remember seeing him for the first time in the middle of Grand Central Station. It was a very, very emotional moment. And a lot of people asked me what it felt like. And I don't know how to describe how meeting someone who has always been been a part of you without ever knowing without ever knowing they existed. When we hugged for the first time, it felt as though someone had finally handed me the missing pages of my own story. For the first time, I knew where my smile came from. I knew where the shape of my nose came from, where my jawline came from, my chin came from. My very muscular shape of body comes from. I mean, I had the impression of looking in the mirror, and it's funny because these are little things, they're ordinary things, and they're the kinds of things most people take for granted their entire lives. But it was wonderful being able to see someone and see someone in which I belonged. It's an incredible feeling. And through one of my half sisters, like I said, I found my surrogate mother. But it was actually my surrogate mother that found me. So in surrogacy contracts, usually there's a confidentiality clause. The surrogate is not allowed to talk about the surrogacy, whatever happened during the surrogacy, and they're not allowed to reach out to the child born through surrogacy. So my surrogate risked, she took a risk and she breached the contract. She found me. Once again, not the other way around. I was always afraid of disturbing her life. I didn't want to be a burden. I mean, she had sold me, so I thought she didn't want to hear about me. But she did reach out to me through Facebook Messenger. And slowly, through the messages, we began talking. I learned about the woman who carried me. So before becoming a surrogate, my surrogate mother, she had lost a little boy who was 2.5 years old in a tragic domestic accident. She was grieving. She still had 4 children depending on her. She was living in profound financial hardship. Holding down the job had become almost impossible for her. And surrogacy seemed like the only way to provide for her family. So she wasn't, dreaming to become a surrogate. She was trying to keep her family alive and afloat. And when people speak about surrogacy, they often speak about choice. But I have often wondered, what does choice really mean when poverty is sitting beside you? And the more I learned about her, the less I saw a woman exercising unlimited freedom. I saw a mother just trying to survive. And one day she told me something I'll never forget. She said, Olivia, if they had to allowed me to hold you just a little longer after you were born, I don't think I would have let you go. And then she told me something else that blew my mind. Every single year on December 10th, my birthday, she would stop and say out loud, "Happy birthday, Olivia." And she did that for 30 years, 30 birthdays, without knowing whether I would ever hear those words. And while I was growing up wondering where my mother was growing older, wondering where her daughter was. And in that moment, I realized something that had completely changed the way I understood my own story. There had never been only one of us grieving. There had always been two. A daughter searching for her mother and a mother searching for her daughter. And if there's one thing I hope you remember from my story, it is not my name, it's not my book, it's not my advocacy, it is this. Every child begins life with a story. And my story began with a contract, then with a separation. It didn't have to begin with that way. And then, of course, I spent 30 years of searching. And you cannot choose how my story began, and neither could I. But together we can choose how another child's story begins. And that is why I am standing before you today. So when I found my biological family on my mother's side, many people assumed that my story had reached its happy ending. Well, in reality, it was only the beginning. Because once I knew the truth, I had a choice. I could keep it to myself, or I could tell the world what surrogacy had meant for one child. At first, I did not want to become an activist. I promise you, I did not want interviews. I did not want the spotlight. I didn't want television shows. I didn't want politics. Not politics. Sorry for politicians here. I simply wanted people to know that behind every single surrogacy arrangement, there is a child who grows up, a child who asks questions, but a child also who has a voice. But because for years, I live in France, I watched documentaries, I read newspaper articles, I listened to debates on TV, political debates, but also debates like with intended parents. Everyone was speaking about surrogacy, the intended parents, the agencies, the doctors, politicians, the lawyers, the fertility clinics. Every single person had a voice except the child. And I kept asking myself, well, where are we? Where are the children who grow up? Where are the adults who have spent their entire lives living with the consequences? Why is everyone speaking about us without ever asking us what it felt like? So I realized if I remained silent, I would become part of that silence. So in May 2023, I picked up my phone and I awkwardly, very, very awkwardly, recorded a video on TikTok. I don't know why I chose that platform. I just did. I wasn't trying to change the world. I was just trying to make one thing visible. And that was, once again, the child. And before I published that video, that first video, I already knew what it might cost me, because telling the truth sometimes comes with a price. My parents made it very clear that if I spoke publicly about our relationship, about surrogacy, our relationship would never, ever be the same. So this was one of the hardest decisions of my life, because I love my parents, I still do. They love me, they're not the villains in my story. I do not point fingers at intended parents. Like I always say, I don't fight intended parents, I fight the surrogacy lobby, and I fight governments that try to make it legal. Because I do believe that my parents love me, they believe that they were giving me the best life possible, and I never doubted that. But love does not erase the truth, and truth does not erase love. Both can exist at the same time. And I knew that if I spoke, I might lose them. And that's exactly what happened. So to this day, since September 2023, we actually no longer have a relationship. We don't talk, we're not on speaking terms. So like my father, unfortunately, once told me, I'm an orphan now, which was one of the hardest things I could hear from my father. And people often tell me, well, you're so brave, Olivia. And I always smile because courage rarely feels courageous, I promise you. Most of the time, it just feels heartbreaking. And sometimes telling the truths cost you the people that you love the most. And I want to just stop one moment and say something about this because it's important. I speak to other children born through surrogacy, and we have this little WhatsApp group that we share. And the other, it's great, it's fantastic. So there's this, because the youngest one's 24. She was commissioned by a single father who abused her entire life. She's traumatized. She'll never speak. Never, ever. She's traumatized for life. The oldest one is baby M, the first case, the first commercial surrogate baby that was born in America. She's 40, she turned 40 last year. And we all talk about our issues with surrogacy on this WhatsApp group. And the one thing that comes up all the time is that we all suffered from different psychological issues, mental health issues, problems with drugs, alcohol. So we have that in common. The only difference between them and I is that my parents hid the truth from me, but they knew their surrogate mother from the very beginning. And the thing that comes up the most is this conflict of loyalty. We have the impression that we owe our parents our lives because they put a lot of money on the table for us. So none of these kids that are now adults are going to speak up because they are deathly afraid of losing their parents like I did. So that's a little side note that I wanted to do because it's very important. We don't speak about this conflict of loyalty enough, and I think we should talk about it a lot more. A lot of people ask me also, maybe you should, why didn't you stay silent? And sometimes I promise you, I wish I did. It is so tiring to go around the world and speak about this, my trauma and my problems and my story and try to change the world. I often joke and I say if I had one day said that surrogacy was wonderful and I had been very happy been born through surrogacy, I would be living in California with a mansion and I'd have a Tesla and a Lamborghini because the surrogacy lobby is worth almost $200 billion now. It's a huge industry with a lot of money, and I would be making a lot of money, but I'm not. But after meeting my surrogate mother, I realized, I was no longer carrying only my story. I was carrying hers too. And for 30 years, I had believed surrogacy had taken one thing away from me. It was my mother. And then I discovered it had also taken something away from her daughter. And like I always said, there was not only one of us grieving, there had always been two. And once I understood that, silence was no longer an option. Another thing that people ask me is well, Olivia, you call yourself a feminist. How can you oppose surrogacy? And I always answer the same way. I became an activist because I am a feminist. To me, feminism has never meant refusing asking the difficult questions. It has meant asking them anyways. Who are the most vulnerable? Who has power? Who carries the burden? Who is invisible? And when I looked at surrogacy through those questions, I stopped seeing my own story. I saw my surrogate mother, a grieving mother, a woman who had lost her little boy, a woman struggling to raise 4 children, a woman living through profound financial hardship. She was trying to just keep her kids from living in the streets. And sometimes I always say, she had the choice between living in the streets, maybe becoming a prostitute, and choosing surrogacy. Surrogacy was the better option, which is horrible. And I kept asking myself, if society had truly stood beside her, would she have ever signed that contract? And I don't know, but I know this. I don't want any single woman in this world to have the freedom to rent their bodies because they have no other choice. I want women to have so many opportunities that no one ever feels like she has to. And to me, that is feminism. We sometimes in surrogacy talk about consent, did she consent? But I wonder, under what circumstances was that consent given? because consent is never exercised in a vacuum. Pregnancy itself is never medically neutral. I mean, every doctor knows this. Every pregnancy carries risks: preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, postpartum hemorrhage, placental complications, emergency surgery. Got a ton of them. We're asking healthy women to take the huge medical risks to produce a child for someone else. And that should make everyone pause. So until recently, we had remarkably little population-based data on the health of surrogate mothers, and that is beginning to change. We had one large population-based study from Ontario that followed more than 863,000 singleton births, including surrogates. And the findings, I think, deserve our attention for a second. Compared with women who conceived naturally, surrogate mothers were more than 3 times more likely to experience severe maternal morbidity. And they found something else, which I think is important to add, is that they found that every woman who became a surrogate mother had 43% greater risk of developing a new mental illness compared with women who conceived naturally. So, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, would you ever dismiss a 43% increase in the risk of a serious health outcome? We should, investigate this. Surrogate mothers deserve that same curiosity. They deserve protection. But my journey has also changed the way I think about children, because we also hear children that are, they're resilient. They're right. Children are very, very resilient. I was resilient. But resilience should never become an excuse for creating avoidable suffering. Children adapt, children survive, children love the families who raise them. I know that because I did. But adapting is not the same as never having lost anything. Gratitude does not erase grief. I can love the parents who raised me. I can be grateful for the life that I have. And I can still believe that no child should be intentionally separated from the woman who carried them for 9 months. Those truths are not contradictions. They are simply the complexity of the human being. People ask me, what changed me? Was it finding my brother, meeting my surrogate mother, becoming a mother myself, losing my parents after speaking publicly? And the truth is, it was all these moments put together. They taught me one lesson that I carry with me every single day. I could not choose how my story began, but I could choose what I could do with it. I chose not to let my wound become bitterness. I chose to let it become my responsibility. And that responsibility led me to a question that I believe all of us should ask. If we know what surrogacy can mean for women, if we know what it can mean for children, what kind of society do we want to build? And that is why I believe the conversation cannot end with my story. It must continue with what we choose to do next. So when I first shared my story online, I thought I was simply telling my own story, and I was wrong. I received tons of messages, millions, like thousands and thousands of messages from around the world. Kids born through surrogacy, surrogate mothers that were traumatized, intended parents, psychologists, doctors, lawyers. And for the first time in my life, I realized something extraordinary. I wasn't alone. My story wasn't unique. It was simply one story among thousands that have remained unheard for far too long. And that journey eventually led me to the Declaration of Casablanca. The Declaration of Casablanca is something incredible. Today, I'm their spokesperson. We are an NGO that's based in France, and we bring together more than 150 experts around 75 different countries. So we are lawyers, doctors, psychologists, philosophers, human rights advocates, feminists, Catholics, atheists, conservatives, progressives, people who disagree on every other subject, politics, on religion, on economics, on countless other ethical questions, and yet we all reach the same conclusion, that no child should become the object of contract, and no woman should be used as a reproductive vessel for the rich, and that surrogacy has to be abolished worldwide. And that's, people with profoundly different worldviews, who would never probably vote for the same political party, can all sit around the same table, it should tell us something. Some principles are bigger than ideology, and perhaps they belong to our common humanity. And I believe that principle is what we call human dignity. One of the expressions that I hear a lot is ethical surrogacy. And I've reflected on those two words for a very long time, and I've come to believe that they completely contradict each other. Not because I doubt the generosity of intended parents, not because I doubt the love that they will give their child, and certainly not because I doubt the courage of the women who become surrogate mothers. I doubt none of those things. I just question whether we can ever describe as ethical a system whose very purpose is the planned separation of a newborn child from the woman who carried that child for 9 months. We are programming the abandonment of children, because that separation is not an accident. It is not failure, it is not an abuse of surrogacy, it is a very purpose of surrogacy. So whether the arrangement is commercial or even described as altruistic, the outcome is always the same. A mother leaves one way, the baby leaves another, and removing the money from the equation does not remove the separation. Replacing payment with generosity does not restore the child's first relationship. A kinder contract does not change the purpose of that contract. And that is why I no longer ask whether surrogacy can be made ethical. I ask whether, I think we've been asking like the wrong question the entire time. It's not simply how can we regulate surrogacy, that's impossible. The real question is, should law ever organize the intentional separation of a mother and her child? And for me, everything begins there. So that is why I believe the future lies not only in regulating surrogacy, because we can't, but in abolishing it. Because abolition is not about condemning people. Quite the opposite, it is about protecting them. It's about protecting women, it's about protecting children, protecting motherhood from becoming a service, protecting medicine from becoming a marketplace, and protecting a society from forgetting that some human relationships deserve to exist outside of logic of contracts. There is a French writer that François Rabelais wrote, "Science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul." Medicine exists to heal, to relieve suffering, to restore health. But when a couple leaves surrogacy with a child, their infertility has not been cured. The child has not treated the disease. The child has just become the response to it. And I believe we should invest our intelligence, our creativity, and our scientific progress into healing infertility itself, not into creating markets that depend upon the separation of mothers and children. And I say it again, this is a market, the surrogacy market, expected to reach $200 billion by 2032. So technology will continue advancing, medicine will continue advancing, science will continue advancing, and I sincerely hope it does. But every generation must eventually answer a far more important question. Not only what are we capable of doing, but should we do it? I cannot change the first chapter of my life. I cannot go back to that little hospital in Kentucky. I cannot place that newborn baby that I was back into my mother's arms. I cannot give my surrogate mother back the 30 birthdays we lost together. But perhaps together we can write a different first chapter for the children who come after us. A world where no woman feels that poverty has left her with no real choice. A world where no child has to spend 30 years searching for the beginning of their own story. A world where scientific progress is always guided by conscience. A world where every child is welcome as a person, never as the object of a contract. And that is, I hope, the world that our generation will build. And that, more than anything else, is why I continue telling my story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivia. We have some questions for the people online, but I don't know if alguien quiere hacer una pregunta, la podemos traducir, o algún comentario.
De mi parte, felicitarla, mamá, por la, como se dice en todas partes, la valentía que he tenido para dar la cara en un tema bien conflictivo, ¿ya? Y creo que que uno muchas veces, nosotros nos cuestionamos, porque cuando no conocemos a nuestros abuelos, lo que comentaba, o sea, ¿de quién es la nariz? ¿De quién son los ojos? Imagínate lo que te tienes que haber cuestionado tú, que es un poco, es tan normal, ya preguntarse de dónde venimos, por qué somos como somos. Nada, solo felicitar.
Well, thank you.
Adriana works with women struggling with their pregnancy and abandoned children. ¿Por cuántos años llevas?
Más de 40 años.
More than 40 years.
Incredible. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Yo
Wow.
Hola, mucho
Hola.
gusto también, sí. Me emocioné.
Oh,
Creo que cuando dijo lo del saludo de cumpleaños, es súper fuerte, porque uno que tiene, mi mamá tiene 92 años, también tengo hijos. Entonces lo que significa para uno saber que puede celebrar es muy emotivo. Así que, gracias.
yes. It shows how there's this scientific term called microchimerism. Maybe some of you know what it is. Maybe.
Hay un término médico llamado microquimerismo. No sé si han escuchado eso.
Where it's from the cell when a woman carries a baby, the cells of the child go into the woman, and the cells of the woman, of the mother, go into the child.
Este fenómeno biológico en el que cuando una mujer está embarazada, las células del bebé migran hacia la madre y las células de la madre también migran hacia el bebé.
And so for up to 30 years after birth, that woman is going to carry the cells of her child that she carried. And that is, I think, why my mother said happy birthday every year, because I was inside of her.
Bueno, y incluso 30 años después, mi madre de alguna manera seguía teniendo esas células mías dentro de ella, y eso creo, dice Olivia, es también lo que le invitó a seguir diciendo feliz cumpleaños durante esos 30 años.
Bueno, también quiero comentarle, nosotros somos de Proyecto Esperanza y acompañamos a las mujeres que tienen secuelas post-aborto. Y yo ayer partí un acompañamiento.
Mujeres que tienen secuelas post-aborto.
Ayer compartí, y esto es confidencial, pero creo que amerita por la persona que estoy acompañando, que la situación es esa. Ella abortó porque venezolana, ya tenía una hija y su pareja simplemente le dijo que él ya tenía presupuestado venirse a otro país. Ella no lo podía seguir todavía y absolutamente claro que fue por un tema económico que ella no pudo seguir su embarazo. Y hoy día tiene 2 niñas y tiene ese vacío.
I say it in my book, but I did too. I had a similar experience.
Ella lo cuenta en su libro. Ella también pasó por un aborto cuando era joven porque vivió una experiencia muy similar de que su pareja en minuto la dejó y no tenía los medios, y pasó también por esa experiencia.
And so I'm sorry, because it's one of the biggest regrets of my life, personally.
Lo siento mucho, uno de los mayores arrepentimientos de...
Gracias.
Voy a pasar a una pregunta que me enviaron online. ¿Cortitas? Bueno, adelante, sí, tenemos tiempo.
First of all, welcome to Chile. Is it your first time here in
Yes.
Chile?
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's very beautiful.
Yes, beautiful and beautiful people.
A very long country.
Small but long. Yes.
Well, first of all, it was so inspiring to hear you. A very beautiful speech, your words, your story, your life. So good. I have like 2 questions because of your history. First, you talked about choice.
Yes.
Was it too difficult, or what were like the emotions you processed in the decision to become a mother of your like for the first time? What were like the emotions of the choice?
Of choosing and becoming a mother myself?
Yes.
I actually didn't want to be well, first of all, I wasn't supposed to be a mother. When I was 25 years old, I was diagnosed with severe endometriosis. So my gynecologist sat me down and he said, like, you're never having children. Yeah. So at first I was like, oh. And of course, surrogacy and IVF, like we talked about with my husband, and like both of those we never wanted to touch. And we said, well, we'll see what happens. And so I did want to become a mother quite young. So we tried, and actually we got 3 little miracles. So that came around. Yeah. But every single time the gynecologist, I went into the doctor's office and he looked and he's like, no, it's impossible that you're pregnant. And I was like, the test says yes. And he looks and he goes, oh. And then the second time I came, and it was a year later, because my first 2 are a year apart, he's like, Olivia, it's impossible. And I was like, nah. Yeah, and the third one, he's like, Olivia, this is too much. This is too much. But now unfortunately, with endometriosis, it goes everywhere. So I had it it was everywhere already, but now it's spread even more. So even, if another one comes around, I'll be happy. But yeah, so that's it. I was very happy.
A lot of things. And the second one is, in all of your years of activism, have you seen any changes in regulatory frameworks in any countries in any way regarding of this topic?
Yes, especially in the last 3 years. I've been doing this for 3 years. Well, before that, we saw, for example, India. India was a huge hub for surrogacy, like Ukraine, because the women were cheap, so unfortunately, and vulnerable. So people went to India, and there were a lot of huge problems that happened. So India closed their borders with surrogacy. So foreigners cannot go to India and buy themselves a child anymore. It can only happen inside of the country. But in the last 3 years, a lot of things happened since I started. Italy passed their law, so Italians cannot do surrogacy in their country, and they cannot go abroad and buy themselves a child and come back. They can be fined up to 1 million euros and 2 years of prison. So this is not too. It's really for prevention, and it's been working quite well. We saw the ban, and I was actually a part of the plan. They put me on a plane and they shipped me to Slovakia. And when I arrived, they said, Olivia, you have to talk to 2 MPs because they're going to vote against the law, because they were voting a law to ban surrogacy in their constitution. And they're like, you have to convince these 2 men.
A lot of
And I was like, what? You have to convince these 2 men to vote for the law. And it was difficult because politics is a game of chess, I can tell you. But eventually these 2 men, they came around and they acted like heroes because they were evicted from their political parties because of their vote. And they voted for it. So that's what happened in Slovakia. They banned it in their constitution. We're seeing Chile also. You've got a bill that's on the table, Ecuador as well. At the UN level, there was a special rapporteur against violence against women and girls who brought out a wonderful document stating that surrogacy in every single way has to be abolished worldwide. We're seeing America also talk about it, which is incredible. The general prosecutor of Florida said that it was slavery. It was just New Age slavery, which I think he's right. And the Americans are actually thinking about banning, because there's a lot of birth tourism in America. So a lot of Chinese couple go to America to get themselves a surrogate so that the child has the American passport, then the citizenship. And the Americans are afraid that these children are going to become future spies. So they're not a bit like, well, it's the American way of thinking, but they want to maybe restrict surrogacy for foreigners. So that's on the table. So we're seeing a shift in the in how people see surrogacy, really.
You visited Pope Francis, I'm sorry. You visited Pope Francis also. Estuvo con el Papa Francisco en algún momento.
Oh,
How was that experience?
oh, that was an experience. I don't know if you want the story behind that, how I was invited.
If you want.
If you want, it's very quickly. Actually, there was this a very famous actress that you may know, Ana Obregón. She's Spanish.
Mhm.
She's 60. She was 68 years old, and she decided to go to Florida in America to have a little girl through surrogacy with the sperm of her son that was dead, with an egg donation in Florida. And she came back with the baby. And so on the birth certificate, you have to imagine that that little girl has a father who is dead, who's born from egg donation, so she'll never know her origins. And her mother is her grandmother on the birth certificate. Yeah. So she came back and she went on the radio of the Spanish bishops, Radio Cope, and they made it sound like it was beautiful, like this. It was a beautiful story, and she was very happy and romantic. And I was like, "What? These are Catholics." Like, so I wrote to the radio show, and they didn't respond. I wrote to the Bishop of Spain; he never answered. And then with my colleague Bernardo, we were like, I'm like, I'm gonna write to the Pope, and he's like, yeah, you should. And so I wrote to the Pope in December, and on the 8th of January, in front of the diplomatic corps, he renewed the fact that the Catholic Church, was against surrogacy, and that it was, it was against Catholic values. And then very shortly after, I received a private invitation to his to his place, and I was shocked. And I can tell you, I remember, because you go into the place, and like you're taken from like room to room to room to room to room, and it's like, I've never been stressed my entire life. I don't get stressed in front of politicians. Like, I believe everyone's equal, but this was like, I felt really nervous because I didn't know how to greet him. I didn't know how to say anything. I was back in the day, I was an atheist, feminist. Like we shared nothing in common, nothing. And so eventually I saw him, and I told him, like, Holy Father, I'm a feminist and an atheist. Like, we share nothing in common, nothing, apart from the fact that we agree on surrogacy. And he looked at me, and he was the sweetest man. He's like a grandfather. Like, he was so humble, and he looked at me, he was like, it's okay, that's fine. And so for the entire meeting, it lasted 30 minutes, we did not talk once about religion. So he respected the fact that I didn't believe, which was, I think, very kind of him, very respectful. And we talked about how he was so smart. He knew that it was a market. He knew how much of a market it was, how it affected the children, how it affected the women. He knew about microshare. It was the first time a politician talked to me about microshamerism, about like scientific facts, not just like, he could have talked about religion and like, but no.
That's will and
Yeah, no, he could have, but no, he stuck to scientific facts and like pure facts. Such a smart man, so smart, and it was fantastic. And he said that he would support the Casablanca Declaration, and the Vatican has actually been a huge support, not financial. Please, you can research on that. We have no finances. Actually, we're doing quite badly, but they've helped us go to the UN, go to different, like, to meet the Italian government. So they've opened doors for us. They've supported us all along. So we're very happy. It was a great experience. May he rest in peace and bless him, but he was such a pure soul.
We have one question from Pamela. Line, still line. Okay, Después, así, siguiente, no problem. It's about your biography. How were you so sure at 17 that you were born through surrogacy and not adoption?
Because when I did the research, when I researched what surrogacy was, I learned about what we call traditional surrogacy. So I learned that there were two different types of surrogacy. So there was gestational surrogacy and there was traditional surrogacy, and that I could have been born from another woman. And the fact that my father could have given his sperm to create me in a laboratory. So it's because I did all these research, and about surrogacy that, I mean, it's just, the whole story just fit, it clicked. And I looked a little bit like my father, like we have, it's funny because I had no emotional connection with my, commissioning mother, the woman who raised me, and we did really try to love each other. There was no emotional connection, but there was a very strong connection with my father. I've always felt it, and he's Swiss, and I always felt like I belonged in Switzerland. Like I felt like when we went to Switzerland, I felt at home. It was my genes speaking, so I knew I had this very strong part of me and my father. And so when I read that that was possible, that we could use the sperm of my father with the egg of another woman to create me, it just made sense. Like that was I was just so sure. Yeah, that was my answer.
And do you think you would have felt more relief if your parents had informed you of the truth from the beginning? Or is that not the issue?
I don't think it's the issue at all because, like I said, I speak to other children born through surrogacy and they all knew from the very beginning. And then some of them even stayed in contact with their surrogate mothers. And when I talk to these kids born through surrogacy, we really all share the same problems, the identity issues, the trauma of abandonment. And I think they even suffer more than I did because having you stay in contact with your surrogate mother, some of them tell me it was this awkward thing where they saw their surrogate mother come into their life, leave and come and leave and come and leave. And they felt like they were kind of abandoned every single time, So no, I don't think it would have made a difference at all because when I compare my story with other stories, we reached common grounds. Lying, of course, I don't think it's a good thing at all. But it was the way it was, I guess.
Okay. ¿Tú tenías una pregunta? Sí.
Bueno, voy a hablar en español.
That's fine.
Bueno, Olivia, muchas gracias. Mi nombre es María Elena Abarca. También, al igual que tú, mi lugar de lucha es por la liberación de mujeres y niñas. Digamos, soy feminista del feminismo radical y soy contacto en Chile de WDI.
Sí. Nice.
De la Declaración Internacional de las Mujeres.
Sí.
Sí. Y por lo mismo estamos muy preocupadas por lo que está pasando en Chile, porque realmente este proyecto de ley consideramos que es un paso hacia la abolición de esta práctica. Y quería, tengo 3 preguntas breves. Primero, lo que hemos notado mucho, y sobre todo si esto lo van a escuchar a lo mejor parlamentarios, parlamentarias, me interesa porque por mi parte he intentado contactar a varios para poder mostrarles una argumentación, informes, declaraciones desde el feminismo al respecto, pero está siendo muy difícil romper el cerco mediático, ¿no? Es muy común ver en Chile declaraciones desde la industria que favorece la regulación, organizaciones que incluso se dicen progresistas o de izquierdas, lo que es muy triste, defendiendo la gestación solidaria o altruista, Entonces, incluso han llegado a decir que esta legislación que busca la prohibición y la sanción en Chile es equiparable a una restricción de derechos respecto de la autonomía de las mujeres. Entonces, el debate está siendo muy tergiversado, y yo quería preguntarte entonces, por un lado, ¿cómo podemos hacerlo respecto a este cerco que hay en los medios? Yo he enviado cartas, columnas de opinión, no son publicadas. Y por otro lado, ¿qué piensas tú o qué le dirías a ese sector de izquierda progresista, donde incluso hay mujeres que se dicen feministas, que defienden la gestación altruista como una opción, basándose en una idea de promover familias diversas o que esto restringiría la autonomía de las mujeres? ¿Qué les dirías tú para esas parlamentarias que quizás escuchan esta charla, puedan tener tu visión al respecto?
How you can reach the media. I wish I could answer that question, but unfortunately in France I'm having the same problem. Every media in France practically is owned by a couple that has had a child born through surrogacy. So I have little to no access to left media and even TV shows. It's very, very difficult. So I wish I had the answer, but I know that even in France, radical feminists, in France, it's not WDI, which I love. I mean, I love your work, very proud of what you're doing. We have Nacida in France, that you know.
Nacida,
Yeah.
La coalición.
And they've been fighting for 15 years in France. No one listens to them. And everyone says, well, where are the feminists? And I'm always saying, like, they're here. You're just not listening to them. And so I wish I could help you. I can't on that question. There's the pro-surrogacy lobby, once again, is worth so much money.
Yes.
So much money. They're so strong that we have just to continue fighting with sticks and stones, and eventually we'll get there. I'm starting in France to have access to some mainstream media from the left, but it's not yet definitive. They were supposed to organize a debate. I haven't heard from them yet, but usually they can't find someone to argue with me, which is annoying. But you just have to keep going, honestly, and keep trying and make yourself known on the internet. X is a powerful, powerful platform. So if you use social media correctly, eventually they come to you, the media.
I think the Casablanca model is an example to follow, because there are many groups, maybe small groups, aiming for the same goal. And maybe if you or we join forces, maybe we could achieve something. The Casablanca Declaration is very surprising because, as Olivia said, there are many different ways of thinking and religions. So there are more other groups.
WDI también firmó. WDI también firmó.
Yes.
Entonces, juntar fuerzas entre grupos que parecen distintos llama la atención de algunos medios que pueden ser más neutrales.
I don't know if you're if you want, you could join our we have WhatsApp groups in for the Spanish speaking countries, and sometimes they give you access to different media outlets. So that would be interesting to have, for example, your voice in El Mercurio. I think because you know that like they keep writing letters in El Mercurio, like they keep sending back and forth letters. But it would be nice to have feminists like write.
Lo he intentado, pero no me han publicado.
Oh, they didn't.
No, pero a través de Casablanca se podría, porque más fuerza te puedo dar en contacto.
With us, we can make your word known.
Sí.
So that's that. To the left, what can I say? To the left, I mean, they're supposed to be anti-capitalism.
And feminists.
They're supposed to be feminists and also against capitalism. You know, that's usually what they're supposed to represent. And I mean, surrogacy is capitalism at like the maximum. We are making literally everything consumable, and that surrogacy isn't freedom. It is not freedom. It does not equal freedom for the woman. When you read a surrogacy contract, and for the people from the left that are listening, maybe you could take my book, and there in the end you've got some surrogacy contracts that I posted. I put some clauses at the end of the book of surrogacy contracts, and you can really see that the woman, whether it's altruistic or commercial, she's reduced into just a reproductive slave. So for 9 months, she can't do what she wants. She can't travel like she wants to. She can't eat what she wants. She can't sometimes have sexual intercourse with her husband. She's literally, like, everything is monitored in her entire life, and she is restricted. So this is not feminism. That is the opposite of feminism. We are
Slavery.
It's slavery. It is. It's I mean, it is slavery 2.0. So there's no that's not what it's not freedom. It's not freedom at all. And I wonder, because like a lot of people promote altruistic surrogacy, for example, I've heard it in Colombia, I've heard it in Mexico, I've heard it like a little bit everywhere, but like, what is altruistic surrogacy really? When we look at it we really, really look at it, it's still the same contract. So we're still like enslaving these women into the contracts. They're forced to sometimes they have to, if like just recently, 2-3 days ago, there's this woman that became a surrogate in America. The baby inside the womb is 20 weeks old, and he's been diagnosed with a heart condition. And the commissioning parents, they want the abortion. So she's forced to abort the child. So if the child presents any defect, even if she says, no, I don't want to abort the child, I want to keep it. And that's her choice. It should be her choice. That's her freedom. She's not allowed to. So even that is stripped away from her. She can't even go get medicine if she wants to go get medicine. I think she's just controlled. It's terrifying. So it's not freedom. And once again, when we look at altruistic surrogacy, like they love to say altruistic surrogacy because it sounds good. But when we look at altruistic surrogacy, the surrogate isn't paid directly. She's paid indirectly via the reimbursement of huge amount of fees that can sum up to a monthly salary. So we can reimburse her clothes, her food, her expenses, her travel, her phone bill. I mean, this can literally get a lot of women out of poverty. So we're still preying on what? Vulnerable women. And I have not yet seen a rich woman carry for a poor woman, ever. And it'll never happen. And if we really take away the money from the equation, all of the money, if we don't reimburse anything, we don't reimburse her clothes, we don't reimburse her food, we don't reimburse anything, just take away all the money. I do not think women would be lining up to give up their babies and go through 9 months of pregnancy and go through I mean, it's painful to give birth. I did it 3 times. It's not the easiest thing, you know. They wouldn't go through the shots of hormones that they have to inflict on their bodies. I mean, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. So this is not freedom. And real feminists, I think they have to read on surrogacy, and they have to inform themselves a little more, because it's not feminism. It's the opposite of feminism. And that we agree on.
Gracias, Olivia. Ojalá te escuchen las parlamentarias y parlamentarios.
Estamos en eso también. Le llegó la invitación y les vamos a mandar el video, en resumen, así que vamos a hacer.
Bueno, primero agradecer sus palabras y segundo porque me llevaste a mi línea de tiempo. Recordar. Viví exactamente lo mismo que tú y a los 17 recién me entero que soy adoptada, pero yo ya tenía una hija de 3 meses. ¿Y por qué me entero? Porque mi madre biológica se pone celosa de que yo había tenido un hijo. Yo no entendía nada de sus celos, pero fue terrible la convivencia en mi casa. Y viene la hija de mi mamá había tenido un matrimonio anterior con 2 hijos, y viene la hija de mi mamá. Años después me entero que por encargo de mi mamá me dijera que por qué yo me estaba portando mal con ella. Y me vino a insultar, a que debieron haberme abortado, debieron haberme votado, y yo nunca debía haber nacido. ¿Por qué hizo eso ella? Porque ella también estaba alejada de su mamá y ella buscaba el cariño y la comprensión de su madre. Una vez que me contó, mi mamá le abrió la puerta y la echó para la casa. Mi papá se puso a gritar que la iba a matar, se fue al fondo del patio a llorar. En ese minuto yo me anulé. No pensé en mí, solamente pensé en las lágrimas de mi papá. Borré. No pude llorar, no pude expresar lo que yo sentía y tuve que aguantarlo. Caminaba en la micro sola y lloraba. Fue algo que todavía no supero y al mismo tiempo me cuestiono porque digo, ¿por qué pasó esto? ¿Por qué me criaron con tanto odio? ¿Por qué tanto maltrato? ¿Por qué no me enseñaron a defenderme? Fui víctima de bullying. En una edad donde el bullying no existía, era maltrato, matonaje. El haber quedado embarazada soltera me llevó a que mis padres biológicos, o sea, mis padres adoptivos me casaran, porque si no, mi hija iba a ser reconocida, que iba a salir en el papel de nacimiento, porque en ese año, el 95, los hijos tenían como ese papel de nacimiento, los hijos quedaban marcados. Y si él no se casaba conmigo, mi papá me iba a mandar al sur. Entonces, no me dieron oportunidades de estudio porque primero básico le dijeron a mis papás que yo era deficiente mental, porque todo me costaba el triple. Le di duro a la vida, fui deportista por iniciativa propia, no me dieron herramientas. Mi padre fue un deportista que yo jamás había sabido que él había sido un deportista de alpinismo importante. Y a los 17 empiezo con el deporte con una guagua al lado. Todos preguntaban de quién era esa hija y era de la niñita que estaba patinando. Yo duré hasta el nacimiento de mi hija, el matrimonio, de ahí yo no aguanté más y anulé el matrimonio después. Y logré salir adelante, entré con 30 años a estudiar educación física en la Universidad Cardenal Rosy Panrique. Me dieron la oportunidad a través de una carta, porque obviamente mi base era pésima y logré ingresar con una media beca, con 30 años y con una hija de 12 años. Y después caí en coma en época de COVID, me dio cetoacidosis diabética renal, casi me muero. Y al salir del coma desperté con otra energía y dije, no, tengo que seguir estudiando. Así que estudié aquí en esta universidad trabajo social. Y actualmente todavía me cuestiono mi vida, todavía lloro, todavía no conozco a mi madre biológica. La intenté buscar, pero mi hija me dijo que parara y que me olvidara, porque me estaba provocando mucho dolor. Al morir mi madre que me crió, me pidió perdón por todos los golpes. Ella fue alcohólica en una época donde la mujer no tomaba, había que ocultarlo. Entonces cada vez que a mí me mandaban al psicólogo por el colegio, yo no tenía derecho a contar. Me hacían llorar, pero yo no contaba. Y bueno, sí, ha sido difícil salir adelante y actualmente vivo con mi padre adoptivo, obviamente, y el día del padre se le ocurrió decirme, no me saludes porque yo no soy tu padre. Me dolió el alma. Vivimos los dos solos y ahora siento que yo, más que su hija, soy su empleada, su nana. Y yo le digo, papá, soy tu hija. Se lo he dicho, hasta llorando. Nos apoyamos los dos, pero ha sido duro, muy duro salir adelante. Eso. Así que te comprendo demasiado.
I'm so sorry.
Lo siente mucho.
Yeah. No, and that's the problem with, I mean, we share a lot, I talk to a lot of adopted children. Yeah, sure. I talk to a lot of adopted children, and a lot of adopted children actually come to talk to me after hearing my story because we share a lot of in common. And we forget a lot that there are 3 times more suicide attempts in adopted children than in normally conceived children. And that's usually something I use because when we see that adoption, I mean, I know that a lot of adoptees suffer from their adoption and their adoptive parents, but in adoption, the idea is that something horrible happened and we're trying to repair a situation, of life. And I always tell people, well, even in that situation where we try and give the child a better life, try. I said, I'm not saying that it happens all the time because I know a lot of adoptees suffer with their adopted families, like you did, unfortunately. And I'm so sorry. Like it breaks my heart. But a lot of adopted children suffer, and I always say, like, if adoptees suffer so much, why wouldn't surrogate-born children suffer also? Because we were literally programmed to be abandoned, and it's not because our parents put a lot of money and put a check on the table that we're going to be happier. There's also a difference with adoption, and I think that has to be noted. In adoption, there are a lot of, I mean, you have to go through a process. It's very complicated to adopt a child now. Back in the day, not a lot, but it's changed with the years. It is very complicated to adopt a child. You're scrutinized. The parents go through years of being looked into. It's very complicated. And but in surrogacy, there are no safeguards for children born through surrogacy. Any person can buy themselves a child, anyone with money, pedophiles, child traffickers, abusers, anyone. And that's why we've seen so many scandals these past few years with surrogacy where, I mean, I could cite 100 different stories, but and they're all so disgusting. There's this one couple that, so it's a homosexual couple that they bought, they were Australian. They bought a child in Russia from a Ukrainian woman. And at the very beginning, they started raping the baby and going around the world and selling the child's sexually to other men for 7 years. That's just one story. Out of, I don't know how many. There was this mansion that was found in California where these 2 parents bought 21 children. 21 children born through surrogacy, because there's no limit to how many children you can buy. You can buy as many children as you want. There's this one couple that actually wants to buy 100 children. But in this mansion in California, there were 21 children that were found, and they were tortured. So they were found with like chains and like they were beaten up. It was disgusting, like absolutely horrible. So there's also a very famous case in Argentina that a French woman, she was alone, and she decided that she wanted to buy a baby in Argentina because it's cheap. And the baby was born preterm, and she decided, well, no, I'm not going to go pick it up, because the baby's not perfect, so I'm not going to pick it up. And so the baby was abandoned. She never came to get the baby. And so the baby, for a couple of months, the state didn't know what to do with it because they were waiting for the court ruling. And eventually, of course, it's the state that took care of the child. And in the ruling, the judge said that this child was treated like a product. And I think he's right. So yeah, I guess that's.
Bernardo told us about farm, a women's farm, surrogate women.
There's so many forms of surrogate women. These women, they're put into houses There's surrogate farms, and there were surrogate farms in India. That's why they closed off their borders. In Ukraine, there are surrogate farms in Africa. There are surrogate farms absolutely everywhere in Mexico, and there's also one in California, where these women they're just parked into apartments, and they're monitored for 9 months, so they can't leave the apartments. They're just packed into these places, and they produce babies for rich couples coming from abroad. There was a scandal in Greece where it's altruistic, where 169 women were trafficked from different countries like Georgia, Albania, I think, but from poor countries, and they were trafficked into Greece. They were forced into the houses. So these were 169 women, and they were forced to produce babies for Australian couples. And that was dismantled in August 2023. So even if this is the problem, like we talk about regulation, we talk about altruistic surrogacy, but once we regulate surrogacy, we make it legal. Once we open up the possibility of surrogacy in a country, we just open up all the possibilities of everything going wrong. Children can be bought in any, like with a check, they can be abused, they can be, women can be abused as well. We're just opening up the country to the market. And then once it's open, it's very complicated to close it.
Yo tengo una última pregunta, no sé si alguien más. As a final message, because well, it's time, you have to go rest also. What are your thoughts on parents who cannot have children or adopt and feel that they are meant to start a family? What message can we give to them? What answers can we give to them?
That's a question that I get asked all the time. I mean, I feel for the parents that can't have children. I mean, infertility is really complicated. I saw what it did to me. I see what it's doing to my friends around me, because I mean, infertility has become a problem because women are also having babies a lot later on in life, and so it's a lot more complicated to have children later on in life. So I became a mother quite young. A lot of my friends are struggling with infertility around me. They're 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. But it's normal because, you know, the older you get, yeah, unfortunately, the biological clock ticks. So it deserves, we have to we have to treat it with a lot of respect. I respect these people that are they really want to become parents. They long to become parents, and it's understandable, and it comes from, it's instinctive, it's normal. We're mammals, you know, we want, some of us, not all of us, but we want to become parents, we want to build a family, but not every desire has to be satisfied, and it's not because you have and you want that you can. I always say children, they can be a desire, but children have rights. They have rights. We have the rights to know our origins. We have the rights to know our parents, to be cared for by them. That these are rights. These are international rights, and we can't step on those rights and step on women's rights as well, just for the desire to have a child. The desire, even though I completely understanding, it just stays a desire. It is not a right. And so I think these parents, they have to step back, maybe do a little more research. Maybe they don't want to adopt, and I can understand, because the adoption process is very complicated and very complex, and truly, I wouldn't have done it, to be honest, even though I know. But I always told my husband, like, if we can't have children, I wouldn't want to go through IVF. I'd never go through surrogacy. Adoption wouldn't be a possibility for us, but I would be the mother of 1,000 children, because you can give to associations, you can go to NGOs, you can go to orphanages, and I promise you, I've done this. If you go and see these children that are just wanting to be loved, they will love you like you're their like you're their mother. They'll give you so much love. A child has so much love to give, and it's beautiful. So you can be the parent of 1,000 different children if you want. And
Parents are needed.
exactly.
Both parents.
So give back to society instead of fulfilling, unfortunately, a very selfish desire.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos a la distancia, también aquí por venir a acompañarnos. Espero que pasemos a ser ahora también embajadores aún más, con más conocimiento, con más sensibilidad, si es que es posible, porque aquí todos trabajamos a favor de los niños, a favor de la familia, pero este es un mensaje que tenemos que llevarlo. Si no llega por los medios, podemos llevarlo a nuestros círculos y a ir haciendo avanzar una pequeña ola. Así que muchas gracias a quienes nos acompañaron a distancia y